Remember when neighbors brought the turkey defrosting in the bathtub day before Thanksgiving? You'd say thank you, then your mom would send back a whole Eve pie. That's how Thanksgiving worked back then. Everyone shared.
Put it in a casserole. Edge with 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs.
The one where you'd pull out Grandma's cookbook. Turkey started cooking before sunrise while pie dough rolled out on the counter. The big dining table had little cards with everyone's name written in perfect handwriting. Thanksgiving back then wasn't just one day, it was neighbors and cooking and sharing together, until somehow it all quietly faded away. Days before Thanksgiving, the frozen turkey took over the family bathroom. This massive bird, wrapped in plastic, sat in the bathtub, surrounded by cold water that needed changing every few hours. The process started on Monday for Thursday's dinner. Children would peek into the bathroom, fascinated by the giant bird taking up the entire tub. Nobody could take a proper bath during defrosting days. Showers only. The bathroom door stayed closed to keep the turkey cold, and someone had to remember to change the water regularly. This wasn't considered strange or unsanitary. This was simply how you prepared a frozen turkey when your refrigerator wasn't big enough. The bathtub method worked perfectly, keeping the bird at a safe temperature while it slowly thawed. Today, we plan better or buy fresh turkeys. We use refrigerator thawing or cold water methods in the sink. But back then, the bathtub turkey was a Thanksgiving staple that marked the official start of holiday preparations in homes across America. Every Thanksgiving table featured small, handwritten place cards telling guests exactly where to sit. These weren't casual suggestions. These were assignments that had been carefully planned days in advance to ensure the right people sat near each other. Making place cards was often a child's responsibility. White cardstock was folded in half to create a tent shape. Names were written in the best cursive handwriting the family could produce. Some families added small drawings, turkeys, autumn leaves, or pumpkins to decorate each card. The seating arrangement required strategy. You didn't seat Uncle Bob next to Aunt Martha because they'd argued last year. Cousin Jenny needed to sit near Grandma because she was good at keeping her engaged. The teenagers were grouped together at one end where their conversations wouldn't disrupt the adults. Children studied the place cards as soon as they were set out, checking their position and who they'd be sitting near. Being moved from the kids' table to the main table was a milestone marked by finding your name on a place card at the big table for the first time. The cards stayed in position throughout the meal, a visible reminder that Thanksgiving dinner had structure and intention. Every 70s, turkey came with a little plastic pop-up timer embedded in the breast. Families gathered around the oven in the final hour, watching through the glass door for that tiny red stick to rise. When it finally popped, children would cheer like it was a countdown reaching 0. The pop-up timer was treated like a scientific instrument, the definitive answer to whether the turkey was done. Mothers would double-check with a meat thermometer anyway, but the pop-up moment was the official signal that Thanksgiving dinner was almost ready. Children took turns checking the oven, reporting back to the family on the timer's status. "Still down," they'd announce, creating anticipation that built throughout the afternoon. The moment someone spotted the red stick standing up was cause for celebration. The timer represented modern convenience meeting tradition. It gave inexperienced cooks confidence and provided a visual signal that everyone could understand. No guessing, no complicated calculations, just wait for the pop. That little plastic device created anticipation and marked the transition from cooking to serving. Today's turkeys still have pop-up timers, but we trust them less, relying instead on digital thermometers and cooking apps. Before dinner, someone would prepare celery and carrot curls, vegetables cut into thin strips and placed in ice water until they curled into decorative spirals. These went into a special divided glass dish alongside olives and pickles. The curling process fascinated children who would check the bowl every few minutes to see the vegetables transform. Making the curls required patience and a sharp knife, slicing the vegetables lengthwise into paper-thin strips. The ice water made them crisp and caused them to curl naturally. By dinner time, the bowl was filled with vegetable spirals that looked fancy and required genuine effort to create. The curls were more than just vegetables. They were edible decorations that showed the host had invested time in presentation. Some families made radish roses, too, cutting the red skin in a pattern that opened like petals when soaked in ice water. Families made their own table runners from burlap or fabric, decorated with fabric paint, stencils, or hand-drawn autumn scenes. Children would help paint turkeys, pumpkins, and fall leaves onto the fabric. Some families used iron-on transfers with Thanksgiving images. The runner was created specifically for that year's dinner, becoming a craft project that involved multiple family members. After Thanksgiving, it was carefully folded and stored to be used again next year, creating a collection of handmade runners that documented years of celebrations. Each runner told a story. The year the youngest child made handprints in orange paint, the year someone spilled gravy that left a permanent stain, the year the family dog walked across wet paint, leaving paw prints. These imperfections became part of the runner's history. Making the table runner was an afternoon activity that happened days before Thanksgiving. Everyone contributed. Someone cut the fabric, someone sketched the design, someone painted. The finished product represented collective effort and creativity. We're just getting started. The next traditions will take you deeper into Thanksgiving memories you forgot you had. Stay with us. The best ones are still coming. Canned cranberry sauce wasn't just opened and served. It was transformed into an art form through the magic of ring molds. The jellied sauce would slide out of the can with its distinctive ridges perfectly intact, then be placed onto a decorative plate. The can opening itself was a small ceremony. Someone would use a can opener to remove both ends of the can, then gently push the cranberry cylinder out onto a plate. The ridges from the can created a pattern that everyone recognized instantly. This was store-bought, and nobody pretended otherwise. The cranberry ring sat on a decorative plate, often garnished with lettuce leaves or orange slices. Some families made their own cranberry sauce from scratch, cooking fresh cranberries with sugar and orange zest until the berries popped and burst. Slicing through the cranberry ring at the table was part of the ceremony. Each person received a slice that held its shape on their plate. The bright red color added festivity to the meal and provided a tart contrast to the rich, savory turkey and gravy. Cranberry sauce divided families into camps. Some people loved it and piled it high on their plates, mixing it with turkey and stuffing. Others avoided it completely, finding the texture strange or the sweetness overwhelming. A wooden bowl filled with mixed nuts in their shells, walnuts, pecans, almonds, Brazil nuts, and hazelnuts, sat on the coffee table with several nutcrackers. Cracking nuts was an afternoon activity while watching football or waiting for dinner. Children would compete to see who could extract a whole walnut half without breaking it. The nutcrackers were often decorative, shaped like soldiers or animals, empty shells accumulated in a separate bowl, and the satisfying crack of breaking a shell punctuated conversations. The ritual taught patience and provided a healthier snack than modern processed foods. Cracking your own nuts made you work for the reward, slowing down consumption and creating a tactile experience. The different nuts required different techniques. Walnuts cracked easily, Brazil nuts needed more force, almonds had to be positioned just right. Fathers would demonstrate proper nut-cracking technique to children, showing them how to position the nut in the cracker's jaws. When stovetop stuffing appeared in grocery stores in the early 70s, it created fierce debates at Thanksgiving tables. Purists insisted on homemade bread, stuffing cooked inside the turkey or in a casserole dish. Modernists embraced the convenience of stovetop, which could be ready in minutes. Some families served both, creating a taste test that became an annual tradition. Children often preferred stovetop's uniform texture and consistent flavor. Adults appreciated homemade stuffing's complexity and tradition. The debate represented larger tensions between convenience and tradition, between modern shortcuts and old-fashioned methods that required time and skill. Serving stovetop was sometimes seen as admitting defeat, acknowledging you didn't have time or ability to make real stuffing. But others defended it passionately, arguing that stovetop was reliable and freed up time for other dishes. Why spend hours making stuffing when a box could deliver consistent results? The debate never reached resolution. Families remained divided. The stovetop controversy captured a moment when convenience foods were transforming American cooking. Thanksgiving became a battleground where tradition confronted modernity, where the old ways competed with new efficiency. Today, both options coexist peacefully, but we've lost that passionate debate about what counted as real food and real cooking. After Thanksgiving dinner, the house would fall quiet as adults claimed couches, recliners, and beds for mandatory naps. The tryptophan in turkey was blamed, though the real culprit was simply eating too much. Children were instructed to play quietly, to not wake the sleeping adults. The house entered a peaceful lull. Football playing softly on television, occasional snores from the living room, the kitchen cleaned and quiet. This forced rest period was non-negotiable, a recognition that the body needed time to process the enormous meal. Grandparents would settle into recliners with newspapers over their faces. Parents would stretch out on couches. Even teenagers might curl up in bedrooms. The nap created a natural break in the day's activities, separating dinner from evening dessert and leftovers. It gave everyone permission to rest without guilt, to acknowledge that doing nothing was sometimes exactly what was needed. Modern Thanksgiving often skips this tradition, keeping people active and engaged throughout the day. But something was lost, that permission to simply rest and digest, that understanding that celebration included rest, that the body deserved time to process abundance before moving on to the next activity. Hoarding, French's fried onions, were essential for green bean casserole, but they only appeared in stores during the holiday season. Families would buy multiple cans, hoarding them for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Running out of fried onions was a genuine crisis that could derail the entire meal. Some stores would sell out weeks before Thanksgiving, causing panic among late shoppers. The scarcity made them precious, and using them felt special. Smart shoppers would stock up in early November, buying 4 or 5 cans to ensure they had enough. The cans were stored carefully, treated like valuable commodities. Finding them in the pantry in July felt like discovering treasure. The seasonal scarcity created urgency and planning requirements. You couldn't just decide to make green bean casserole on a whim. You had to have prepared weeks in advance. This planning was part of what made Thanksgiving special. Today, fried onions are available year-round in multiple brands and sizes. We can make green bean casserole any time without planning ahead. But they've lost that seasonal specialness, that sense that you had to plan ahead and stock up or risk going without. The hoarding ritual made them more valuable than their actual cost suggested. These traditions are just the beginning. The next 20 will transport you back to Thanksgiving dinners that felt like coming home. You won't believe what we used to do. Made-from-scratch gravy in the 70s wasn't made from a packet or jar. It was created from the turkey drippings, giblets, and neck, transformed through patience and skill into a rich, flavorful sauce that brought the entire meal together. The process started when the turkey first went into the oven. The giblets, heart, liver, and gizzard, along with the neck, were removed from the turkey cavity and placed in a pot with water, onion, celery, and herbs. This mixture simmered on the stove for hours while the turkey roasted, creating a rich stock. As the turkey cooked, fat and juices collected in the roasting pan. These drippings were liquid gold, containing concentrated turkey flavor that couldn't be replicated any other way. When the turkey was done, it was removed to rest, and the real work began. The drippings were poured into a separator or skimmed to remove excess fat. Flour was whisked into the remaining fat in the roasting pan, creating a roux that cooked until golden brown. The giblet stock was gradually added, whisked constantly to prevent lumps. The gravy simmered and thickened, developing deep, complex flavors. The cooked giblets were chopped fine and added back to the gravy, along with the meat picked from the neck. Some people loved finding these little pieces in their gravy. Others carefully avoided them. But everyone agreed that gravy made from scratch, using every part of the turkey, tasted infinitely better than anything that came from a can or packet. Making giblet gravy required skill and attention. The roux had to be the right color. The whisking had to be constant. The seasoning had to be adjusted multiple times, but the result was worth every bit of effort. A gravy that was rich, flavorful, and uniquely suited to that specific turkey, that specific meal, that specific Thanksgiving. Halfway through roasting, the turkey would be tented with aluminum foil to prevent the skin from burning while the inside continued cooking. Creating the perfect tent required skill. It had to cover the turkey loosely without touching the skin, allowing heat to circulate while protecting the breast. The tent was constructed from heavy-duty aluminum foil, molded into a dome shape that arched over the turkey. The foil couldn't touch the skin, or it would stick and tear when removed. It had to be loose enough to allow steam to escape, but tight enough around the edges to stay in place. Experienced cooks had their own tenting techniques. Some crimped the foil around the roasting pan's edges. Others simply draped it loosely over the top. The goal was protecting the breast meat, which cooked faster than the thighs, from drying out or burning. Removing the tent in the final hour let the skin brown and crisp to perfection. This timing was crucial. Remove it too early, and the breast would burn. Remove it too late, and the skin wouldn't achieve that beautiful golden brown color everyone wanted. The foil tent was a crucial technique that separated experienced cooks from novices. It showed understanding of how heat worked, how different parts of the turkey cooked at different rates, how to protect delicate breast meat while ensuring dark meat reached safe temperatures. Today's cooking methods and oven technologies have made tenting less necessary. Modern recipes often start the turkey at high heat, then reduce temperature, or cook it breast side down. But the aluminum foil tent was once an essential step that every Thanksgiving cook had to master, a visible sign of expertise and attention to detail. The gravy boat was preheated with hot water before the gravy was poured in, ensuring the gravy stayed warm throughout the meal. This small detail showed attention to serving temperature and guest comfort. The ritual began in the kitchen minutes before serving. Hot water was poured into the gravy boat and left to sit while final preparations were completed. Just before bringing the gravy to the table, the water was dumped out and the boat was dried quickly with a towel. The warm ceramic or silver retained heat, keeping the gravy at the perfect temperature. Cold gravy boats would cool the gravy too quickly, causing it to thicken and congeal. A warm boat meant the gravy stayed pourable and delicious from first serving to last. The gravy boat itself was often silver or fine china, matching the formal table setting. It had a special spout designed for controlled pouring and a handle that stayed cool enough to hold. Some families had matching gravy boats and serving pieces, creating a coordinated presentation. Someone was designated as the gravy boat monitor, responsible for refilling it and ensuring it never ran dry. Running out of gravy was considered a hosting failure. The gravy boat represented abundance. There should always be more, always enough for seconds and thirds. After dinner, the refrigerator had to be reorganized to fit all the leftovers. This required strategy and spatial reasoning, moving existing items to create space for multiple containers of turkey, stuffing, vegetables, and pie. Families would play refrigerator Tetris, stacking containers carefully, using every available inch. Milk jugs were moved to the door. Condiments were consolidated. Anything that could be temporarily relocated was removed to make room for Thanksgiving leftovers. The process required planning. Flat containers stacked better than round ones. Clear containers let you see what was inside without opening them. Everything had to be labeled with masking tape and marker: turkey breast, dark meat, stuffing, gravy, because within days everything would look similar. Some items would be temporarily relocated to coolers on the porch or garage if the weather was cold enough. In northern states, the back porch became auxiliary refrigerator space, holding pies and casseroles that didn't fit inside. The full refrigerator was a point of pride, visible evidence of abundance and successful hosting. Opening the refrigerator door in the days after Thanksgiving revealed a packed space where every shelf held memories of the feast. Today's larger refrigerators make this less challenging, but the Tetris game was once a real post-Thanksgiving puzzle that required cooperation and creativity. Everyone had opinions about the best arrangement, and successfully fitting everything in felt like winning a game. Mincemeat pie sat on the dessert table at many Thanksgiving dinners, looking innocent but causing passionate debates. This dense, dark pie, filled with dried fruits, spices, and sometimes actual meat, was a tradition brought from England that divided American families into fierce camps. Traditional mincemeat contained suet or beef, along with raisins, currants, candied citrus peel, apples, and a heavy dose of brandy or rum. The mixture was aged for weeks, allowing the flavors to meld and intensify. The alcohol preserved the filling and gave it a distinctive taste that people either loved or hated with equal passion. By the 70s, most families used prepared mincemeat from jars, which was usually vegetarian despite the name. But the controversy remained. Children almost universally rejected mincemeat pie, finding the dark color and complex flavors off-putting. Adults were split. Older generations who remembered the tradition loved it, while younger adults often sided with the children. The pie itself was beautiful when done right. A golden, flaky crust enclosed the dark, jewel-toned filling. Some bakers added a lattice top or cut decorative vents in the shape of leaves or stars. Served warm with a scoop of vanilla ice cream or a dollop of whipped cream, it was striking on the dessert table. Mincemeat pie represented old-world traditions and the immigrant experience. It connected American families to English Christmas and Thanksgiving customs that had been adapted and modified over generations. After the turkey was carved and leftovers distributed, the carcass was saved for making soup. This wasn't done immediately. It was a promise for the weekend after Thanksgiving. The bones would simmer for hours with vegetables and herbs, creating rich turkey stock that became soup. The carcass was wrapped and refrigerated, taking up significant space but considered too valuable to discard. Making soup from the carcass was considered thrifty and wise, using every part of the bird. Nothing was wasted, even the bones had one final purpose. On Saturday or Sunday, the soup-making would begin. The carcass went into the largest pot with water, onions, carrots, celery, bay leaves, and peppercorns. It simmered for hours, filling the house with a different kind of turkey smell, lighter, cleaner, more subtle than roasting. After simmering, the bones were removed and discarded. The broth was strained, and any remaining meat was picked from the bones and added back to the soup. Vegetables were added, sometimes fresh, sometimes leftover from Thanksgiving dinner. Noodles or rice made it more substantial. The soup extended Thanksgiving for days, providing easy meals when everyone was tired of cooking. It transformed the turkey one final time, creating something new from what seemed like waste. The soup was comfort food that required minimal effort once the stock was made. Today, many people discard the carcass, losing that final use of the turkey and the tradition of stretching abundance as far as possible. The turkey carcass soup represented resourcefulness and respect for food, understanding that value remained even in what appeared to be scraps. In many coastal and southern families, oyster dressing was as essential to Thanksgiving as turkey itself. This wasn't the standard bread stuffing everyone knew. This was something more sophisticated, more regional, more connected to place and tradition. The dressing started with a cornbread base, crumbled and dried. Celery and onions were sautéed in butter until soft and fragrant. Fresh oysters, shucked that morning or the day before, were added along with their liquor. The oyster liquor was crucial, adding briny depth that couldn't be replicated. Herbs like sage, thyme, and parsley were mixed in, along with chicken or turkey stock to moisten everything. The mixture was neither too wet nor too dry, achieving that perfect consistency where it held together but wasn't dense. Some recipes included a beaten egg to help bind everything. The dressing baked in a casserole dish until the top was golden and slightly crispy, while the inside remained moist and flavorful. The oysters cooked into the dressing, their texture becoming tender and their flavor infusing every bite. For families who grew up with oyster dressing, Thanksgiving without it was incomplete. The briny, savory flavor complemented turkey perfectly. Children often resisted it at first. Oysters seemed strange and intimidating, but many grew to love it, associating that unique taste with Thanksgiving and home. Oyster dressing represented regional identity and family heritage. It wasn't something everyone made, which made it special for families who did. The tradition connected people to coastal communities, to fishing heritage, to the bounty of the sea mixed with the bounty of the land. Today, oyster dressing has become less common, fading along with many regional food traditions that once defined how different parts of America celebrated the same holiday. But for those who remember it, oyster dressing was irreplaceable, a taste that defined Thanksgiving in a way no other dish could. After Thanksgiving dinner was eaten and dishes were cleared, families gathered in the living room for the afternoon football games. This wasn't casual background noise. This was a ritual that brought multiple generations together. Even those who didn't particularly care about football. The television was turned on early in the day, often showing the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in the morning, then transitioning to football in the afternoon. The Detroit Lions always played on Thanksgiving, a tradition dating back decades. The Dallas Cowboys joined them starting in the 60s, creating a double-header that lasted most of the afternoon. Men claimed the best seats, the couch, the recliners, the spots closest to the television. They settled in with loosened belts and unbuttoned pants, too full to move, but committed to watching every play. Women often joined them, some genuinely interested in the game, others simply enjoying the togetherness. Children played on the floor with new toys or games, half watching the television while adults provided running commentary. Teenagers might disappear to other rooms, but would drift back periodically to check the score or see an important play. The football games created a comfortable background for digestion and relaxation. Conversations happened during commercials and timeouts. Naps were taken on couches and in recliners, with the television providing white noise. The games marked time, creating a structure for the afternoon that prevented the awkwardness of too much forced togetherness. Snacking continued throughout the games. Leftover rolls, extra pie, anything that hadn't been put away. Everything was fair game. The kitchen stayed active even as people tried to rest, with family members wandering in and out, grazing on Thanksgiving leftovers. The football tradition connected Thanksgiving to American culture in a way that felt natural and unforced. It gave people something to do together that didn't require intense interaction. It created shared experiences and memories: the year your team won, the year that incredible play happened, the year Grandpa fell asleep in his chair during the fourth quarter. Late on Thanksgiving night, after dinner was long over and everyone was supposedly too full to eat another bite, the leftover sandwich tradition began. This wasn't planned or formal. It was spontaneous, driven by genuine hunger that returned after hours of digestion. Someone would wander into the kitchen, open the refrigerator, and start pulling out containers. Soon, others would join, and an impromptu assembly line would form. The leftover sandwich was an art form with no rules, only possibilities. The foundation was usually soft white bread or leftover dinner rolls. Turkey was essential, sliced thick or pulled into chunks. Stuffing was added, sometimes spread like a condiment, sometimes piled high as a layer. Cranberry sauce provided sweetness and moisture. Some people added gravy, though this made the sandwich messier. Mashed potatoes were controversial. Some people loved them on sandwiches, creating a carb-heavy creation that was more about comfort than balance. Others drew the line at potatoes, preferring to keep some boundaries even in leftover sandwich construction. The sandwiches were eaten standing at the kitchen counter. Often in pajamas or comfortable clothes, everyone had changed into hours earlier. Conversations were quieter, more intimate than the loud dinner table discussions. People were tired but content, enjoying this final ritual of the day. Some families made leftover sandwiches a formal tradition, planning for them by saving specific amounts of each dish. Others let it happen organically, with sandwich construction depending on what remained and who got to the kitchen first. The leftover sandwich represented the continuation of Thanksgiving beyond the formal meal. It showed that the abundance lasted, that there was more than enough, that the celebration didn't have to end just because dinner was over. Those late-night sandwiches, eaten in quiet kitchens while the rest of the house slept, became some of people's favorite Thanksgiving memories. In the days following Thanksgiving, children were required to write thank-you notes to the hosts, to grandparents who had attended, to anyone who had given them anything during the celebration. This wasn't optional. This was an essential part of proper manners and family etiquette. The notes were handwritten on proper stationery or note cards, never typed or printed. Children would sit at the kitchen table with pens and cards, struggling to find the right words. "Dear Grandma, thank you for having us for Thanksgiving. The turkey was delicious. I had a great time. Love, Sarah." Parents supervised the note writing, making sure each note was legible, properly spelled, and sufficiently grateful. The notes had to be specific, mentioning the meal, thanking for hospitality, acknowledging any gifts or special treatment received. The notes were mailed within a week of Thanksgiving, addressed by hand with real stamps. Children learned the entire process, addressing envelopes, licking stamps, understanding that gratitude required effort and follow-through, not just a quick verbal thank you. Receiving these handwritten notes was meaningful for the recipients. Grandparents would save them in boxes, rereading them years later. Hosts appreciated the acknowledgement that their efforts had been noticed and valued. The thank you note tradition taught children important lessons about gratitude, effort, and relationship maintenance. It showed that being thankful wasn't just a feeling, it was an action that required time and attention. Today, we might send a quick text or email if we remember to thank people at all, but something has been lost in that convenience. the tangible evidence of gratitude, the physical object that could be held and saved, the understanding that some things are worth doing the old way, even when easier options exist. Thanksgiving dinner in the 70s meant bringing out the formal china service that spent the rest of the year in a cabinet or closet. This wasn't just about using nice plates. This was about ceremony, about marking the day as special through the objects chosen to serve the meal. The china service was often a wedding gift, sometimes passed down through generations. Each piece had meaning and history. The dinner plates, salad plates, bread plates, soup bowls, serving platters, gravy boat, and vegetable dishes all matched, creating a coordinated presentation that transformed the table into something elegant and refined. Preparing the china for use was a ritual in itself. Each piece was removed from the cabinet where it had been stored, often wrapped in tissue paper or cloth to prevent chips and scratches. Everything was washed by hand, never in the dishwasher, using gentle soap and warm water. The pieces were dried immediately with soft towels to prevent water spots. Setting the table with the formal china took time and attention. Each plate was positioned exactly, aligned with the chair behind it. The pattern faced the right direction. Everything had to be perfect because this china only appeared a few times a year, and using it properly showed respect for the tradition and the family history it represented. During dinner, everyone was extra careful. Children were warned multiple times to be gentle, to not stack plates, to handle everything with care. The china was beautiful but fragile, and breaking a piece was a genuine tragedy that would leave a gap in the set that could never be properly filled. After dinner, washing the china was done with the same care as setting it. Each piece was hand-washed, dried, and inspected before being returned to storage. This process took far longer than simply loading a dishwasher, but the extra time was part of the tradition, part of showing that Thanksgiving deserved this level of attention and care. The formal china represented continuity and family heritage, using the same plates your grandmother had used, serving Thanksgiving dinner on dishes that had been part of family celebrations for decades, created a tangible connection to the past. The china was a physical manifestation of tradition, proof that some things were worth preserving and passing down, even in a world increasingly focused on convenience and disposability. Today, many people have abandoned formal china entirely, preferring everyday dishes or disposable plates for easier cleanup. But something has been lost. That sense of occasion, that physical reminder that some days are special and deserve to be marked with objects that are themselves special, that connect us to our history and to the people who came before us. Days. Before Thanksgiving, the formal tablecloth was removed from storage and ironed with precision. This wasn't quick work. Large tablecloths required careful attention, ironing in sections, ensuring no wrinkles remained. The tablecloth was usually white or cream-colored linen or damask, heavy and substantial. It had been folded and stored since last Thanksgiving or Christmas, and the fold lines were deep creases that required steam and pressure to remove. The ironing board was set up in a central location, often the dining room itself. The iron was heated to the appropriate setting for the fabric. Someone, usually the mother or grandmother, would spend an hour or more working on the cloth, ironing section by section. The ironing was often done while watching television or listening to music, a meditative task that marked the beginning of Thanksgiving preparations. The rhythmic movement of the iron, the hiss of steam, the gradual smoothing of wrinkles created a sense of calm and purpose. Children might help by holding sections of the cloth or by carrying the ironed portions carefully to avoid re-wrinkling. The cloth might be covered with a sheet or plastic to keep it pristine. The perfectly ironed tablecloth represented standards and pride. It showed that the family cared about details, that they were willing to invest time in making everything right. The smooth, crisp surface was a foundation for the entire table setting, creating a backdrop that made the china, silverware, and food look even more beautiful. Today's wrinkle-resistant fabrics and permanent press materials have eliminated much of this tradition. We might use tablecloths straight from the package or skip them entirely in favor of placemats or bare tables. But the hours spent ironing showed dedication to making everything perfect, understanding that beauty required effort and that some tasks, though tedious, were worth doing because they contributed to the overall experience of the celebration. The smooth, crisp surface was a foundation for the entire table setting, creating a backdrop that made the china, silverware, and food look even more beautiful. Today's wrinkle-resistant fabrics and permanent press materials have eliminated much of this tradition. We might use tablecloths straight from the package or skip them entirely in favor of placemats or bare tables. But the hours spent ironing showed dedication to making everything perfect, understanding that beauty required effort and that some tasks, though tedious, were worth doing because they contributed to the overall experience of the celebration.
Oh. Hey, you missed us a spot, right?
Pie baking marathon. Thanksgiving Eve was pie day in many households. This wasn't about baking 1 or 2 pies. This was a marathon baking session that filled the kitchen with flour dust and the house with incredible aromas, producing enough pies to feed the family and send slices home with guests. The day started early with pie crust preparation. Some families used lard for flakiness, others preferred butter for flavor. The most traditional used a combination. The dough was mixed, chilled, rolled out, and fitted into pie plates with crimped edges that showed off the baker's skill. Multiple pie varieties were essential. Pumpkin pie was non-negotiable, made from fresh pumpkin or canned puree mixed with eggs, cream, and warm spices. Apple pie required peeling and slicing mountains of apples, tossing them with cinnamon and sugar, creating a filling that would bubble and thicken during baking. Pecan pie, with its sweet, gooey filling studded with nuts, was another favorite. Some families made mincemeat pie for the older generation. Others included sweet potato pie, cherry pie, or even chocolate cream pie for children who didn't like traditional options. The kitchen became an assembly line. One person rolled crusts, while another prepared fillings. Pies went into the oven in shifts, filling the house with waves of different aromas, cinnamon and apples, then pumpkin and spices, then the caramel-like scent of baking pecan filling. The marathon lasted most of the day. By evening, the counter was lined with cooling pies, each one a work of art. Some had lattice tops, others had decorative cutouts of leaves or turkeys made from excess dough. The variety and abundance showed that this family took Thanksgiving seriously, that dessert was as important as the main meal. Baking pies together created memories and taught skills. Younger family members learned how to make crust, how to crimp edges, how to test doneness. They learned that creating abundance required time and effort, that feeding people well was an act of love that deserved an entire day of focused work. The tradition also created anticipation. The pies sat on the counter all Thanksgiving Day, visible but untouchable until after dinner. Their presence was a promise of sweetness to come, a reward for making it through the meal. Today, we might buy pies from bakeries or make just 1 or 2 varieties, but the Thanksgiving Eve baking marathon represented commitment to doing things right, to creating abundance from scratch, to showing love through the time and effort invested in feeding people well. Thanksgiving dinner in the 70s had a dress code. This wasn't casual. People dressed up, showing respect for the holiday and the effort that went into creating the meal. The clothing choices marked Thanksgiving as special, different from ordinary days. Men wore dress shirts, slacks, and often ties. Some wore suits or sport coats, especially if they were guests rather than family. The formality showed that Thanksgiving dinner was an event worth dressing for, that the day deserved their best appearance. Women wore dresses or skirts with nice blouses. Pantsuits were acceptable, but less common. Jewelry was worn. necklaces, earrings, bracelets that were saved for special occasions. Hair was styled, makeup was applied. The effort put into appearance matched the effort put into the meal. Children were dressed in their best clothes, boys in slacks and button-up shirts, girls in dresses with tights and nice shoes. They were warned repeatedly to stay clean, to not play too rough, to remember they were wearing good clothes that needed to last through dinner. The formal dress code created a different atmosphere than casual clothing would have. People sat up straighter, minded their manners more carefully, behaved with a level of decorum that matched their appearance. The clothing was a physical reminder that this was a special occasion. After dinner, there was often a changing ritual. Adults would excuse themselves to put on more comfortable clothes, men removing ties and changing into casual pants, women switching to comfortable dresses or even nice pajamas. But the formal clothing had served its purpose, marking the dinner hour as sacred time that deserved everyone's best presentation. The dress code taught children about respect and occasion. They learned that how you dressed communicated how seriously you took an event, that some celebrations were worth the discomfort of dress shoes and stiff collars, that appearance mattered as a form of honoring the people who had worked to create the celebration. Today, Thanksgiving dress codes have relaxed significantly. Many families celebrate in jeans and sweaters, prioritizing comfort over formality. Some people wear pajamas all day, never bothering to dress up at all. There's nothing wrong with comfort, but something has been lost, that sense of occasion, that physical marking of the day as special. That understanding that some events are worth the effort of dressing up even when it's not required, that showing respect through appearance is a meaningful gesture that honors both the celebration and the people who created it. After the turkey was carved and the meal was eaten, the wishbone was carefully removed, cleaned, and set aside to dry. This Y-shaped bone from the turkey's chest would be the center of a small ceremony that happened later in the day or even the next day, after the bone had dried and become brittle enough to break cleanly. 2 people were chosen to break the wishbone, often the youngest and oldest person present, or 2 children who had behaved well during dinner, or simply 2 people who wanted to participate. Each person hooked their pinky finger around one side of the wishbone's fork. Before pulling, each person made a silent wish. The wishes were secret, never spoken aloud. The belief was that speaking the wish would prevent it from coming true. Children took this very seriously, squeezing their eyes shut and concentrating on their deepest desires. On the count of 3, both people pulled. The wishbone would snap, leaving one person with the larger piece and one with the smaller. The person who got the larger piece, the one that included the center joint, won, and their wish would supposedly come true. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. It combined superstition, hope, and friendly competition. Children who lost would be disappointed but philosophical, already planning what they'd wish for next year. Winners would guard their wish carefully, waiting to see if it came true. Breaking the wishbone was one of the few Thanksgiving traditions that explicitly involved luck and wishes, adding a touch of magic to a holiday otherwise focused on gratitude and abundance. Some families saved the wishbone for weeks or even months, displaying it on a windowsill or shelf until it was thoroughly dried. Others broke it the same day, while Thanksgiving was still happening. Either way, the wishbone ceremony was a small tradition that children remembered and looked forward to, a moment of possibility and hope embedded in the Day of Thanks. The final 5 traditions are the ones that defined Thanksgiving in the 70s. These are the memories that will hit you right in the heart. You're going to want to hear every single one. Thanksgiving morning had its own ritual that happened before any cooking began. Families gathered in the living room, often still in pajamas, to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on television. This wasn't background noise. This was appointment viewing that marked the official start of Thanksgiving Day. The parade had been a tradition since the 1920s, but television broadcasts made it accessible to families across America. Children sat close to the television, excited to see the giant balloons floating down New York City streets. Snoopy, Underdog, Mickey Mouse, and other beloved characters rendered enormous and magnificent. The parade featured marching bands from high schools across the country. Watching for bands from your state or region created a personal connection to the distant celebration. Families would cheer when their state was mentioned, feeling part of something national and grand. Broadway shows performed numbers on elaborate floats, giving families a glimpse of productions they might never see in person. Santa Claus always appeared at the end, riding his sleigh and officially marking the start of the Christmas season. His arrival was the signal that Thanksgiving was transitioning into the next holiday. Mothers often watched the parade while beginning meal preparations, moving between the living room and kitchen. The parade's timing was perfect. It gave children something to do while adults worked, and it created a shared experience that everyone could reference later. Did you see that balloon almost hit the building? Wasn't that band from Ohio amazing? Today, the parade still airs, but many families have abandoned the tradition of watching it together. We're more likely to stream it later or skip it entirely, focused on meal preparation or other activities. But something has been lost. That shared morning ritual, that moment of togetherness before the day's chaos began, that connection to a national celebration that made Thanksgiving feel bigger than just one family's dinner. The cornucopia, that horn-shaped basket overflowing with fruits, vegetables, and fall harvest, was a Thanksgiving table staple in the 70s. This wasn't just decoration. This was a symbol of abundance and gratitude that captured the entire meaning of the holiday in one visual display. The cornucopia itself was usually made of wicker or woven straw, shaped like a horn or cone. Some families had cornucopias that were decades old, brought out every Thanksgiving and carefully stored the rest of the year. Others purchased new ones periodically, replacing worn or damaged pieces. Filling the cornucopia was an art form. The display started with larger items at the back, small pumpkins, gourds, apples, and oranges. These created the base and height. Medium-sized items came next: pears, pomegranates, ears of Indian corn with their colorful kernels. Smaller items filled the front and spilled out onto the table. Grapes in clusters, walnuts and pecans still in their shells, cranberries, and sometimes artificial fruits and vegetables that looked real but lasted forever. The goal was to create an overflowing effect, suggesting that the harvest was so abundant it couldn't be contained. The cornucopia sat in the center of the table or on a sideboard, visible throughout the meal. It represented the agricultural roots of Thanksgiving, connecting the modern celebration to harvest festivals that predated the holiday. The overflowing abundance was both literal and symbolic. Yes, there was plenty of food, but there was also plenty of love, family, and reasons for gratitude. Children learned about the cornucopia's symbolism in school, where they often made paper versions filled with construction paper fruits and vegetables. Seeing the real version on the Thanksgiving table reinforced those lessons, making the holiday's meaning tangible and visual. The cornucopia tradition has faded significantly. Modern Thanksgiving tables might have simpler centerpieces or none at all. We understand the symbolism intellectually, but don't feel the need to display it physically. But the cornucopia captured something essential about the holiday: the celebration of abundance, the gratitude for harvest, the acknowledgement that having enough to eat and share was something worth commemorating and never taking for granted. Before anyone sat down to eat, before the food was served, there was a photo ritual. The family gathered in the dining room, dressed in their best clothes, standing around or behind the perfectly set table. Someone, Usually a father or uncle with the family camera would take a formal photograph capturing the moment before the celebration began. These photos documented more than just people. They captured the table setting, the china, the centerpiece, the formal arrangement that had taken hours to create. They showed the food in its pristine state before anyone had taken a serving. They preserved the anticipation, that perfect moment when everything was ready, but nothing had yet begun. The photos were taken with film cameras, which meant you only got a few shots before running out of film or deciding you'd taken enough. There was no reviewing images on a screen, no deleting and retaking until you got the perfect shot. You took the photo, hoped everyone's eyes were open and everyone was smiling, and moved on. Getting everyone together for the photo was often chaotic. Children fidgeted. Someone always blinked. The photographer had to count down 1, 2, 3, and hope for the best. But the imperfection was part of the charm. These weren't professional portraits. They were real moments, captured honestly. The photos would be developed days or weeks later. When they came back from the drugstore, the family would gather to look through them, reliving Thanksgiving through these frozen moments. The photos went into albums, carefully labeled with the year and who was present. Years later, these photos became treasures. They showed family members who were no longer alive, captured in their prime. They documented children who had grown into adults. They preserved table settings and decorations that seemed quaint or outdated, but were beautiful in their sincerity. The pre-dinner photo tradition created a record of family history and Thanksgiving evolution. Looking back through years of photos showed how the celebration changed, who joined the family through marriage, who was born, who was lost. The photos were proof that these gatherings happened, that these people came together, that these moments of abundance and gratitude were real and worth remembering. Today, we take hundreds of photos with smartphones, documenting every moment of Thanksgiving from multiple angles. But something has been lost. That single, formal photo that captured the entire celebration in one frame, that required everyone to pause and come together, that became a treasured record precisely because it was the only photo taken, making it precious in its singularity. Before the meal began, many families formed a prayer circle, standing around the table with hands joined. This was different from the seated blessing. This was a physical connection, a circle of family members linked together in gratitude. Everyone stood behind their chairs, reaching out to hold hands with the people on either side. The circle created a visible symbol of unity and connection. Young children held their parents' hands tightly. Teenagers might be self-conscious, but participated anyway. The circle was unbroken, including everyone present. The prayer was led by the patriarch or matriarch, or sometimes passed around the circle with each person contributing a sentence or two. The words expressed gratitude for food, for family, for health, for the year's blessings. Some families used traditional prayers, others spoke spontaneously from the heart. The physical act of holding hands added meaning beyond the words. You could feel the connection, the warmth of hands, the slight squeeze when someone was moved by the prayer, the physical reminder that you were part of something larger than yourself. After the prayer, there was often a moment of silence before everyone said, "Amen," together. Then hands were released and people took their seats. The circle had served its purpose, creating a moment of unity and gratitude before the meal began. The prayer circle represented community and connection. It acknowledged that the abundance on the table wasn't individual achievement, but collective blessing. It reminded everyone that they were together by choice and fortune, that the gathering itself was something to be grateful for. Today, many families have moved away from formal prayers and physical rituals. We might offer a brief blessing while seated, or skip it entirely. But the prayer circle created a powerful moment of connection, physical, emotional, and spiritual, that marked the transition from preparation to celebration, from individual to collective, from ordinary time to sacred time. Before dessert was served, many families had a tradition of going around the table with each person sharing something they were thankful for from the past year. This wasn't the formal blessing before the meal. This was a separate moment, more personal and individual, when everyone had a chance to speak and be heard. The sharing usually started with the oldest person present or the host. They would share their gratitude for health, for family gathered together, for specific blessings from the year. Then the sharing moved around the table, each person taking their turn. Children often shared simple things, getting a new bike, doing well in school, making a new friend. Their gratitude was concrete and immediate, focused on things they could see and touch. Adults shared deeper gratitudes: recovery from illness, job security, the birth of a grandchild, simply being alive and together.